Thank you for sticking with us in this email worship. Here we are with Jesus walking on the water, and this message is called What Jesus Pulls Us Into, Jesus Can Also Pull Us Through. So thank you for humoring me a minute as we watch this silly commercial about walking on water. Yes, you guessed it. This is the week we encounter the Matthew reading about Jesus walking on the water. You know, the first evening I sat down with this text about Jesus and Peter walking on the water, I watched a program on TV afterwards with my wife before bedtime. And this commercial that we just saw came on. I can't get away from the feeling of joy this dancer has in dancing on the water. And I have to reflect also that one of the spiritual gifts is joy, and that Jesus brings joy into unexpected places. As I watch it, and as I think about the Sea of Galilee, and that there were waves, and it was a rough, windy, choppy night out at sea, I think that as morning comes, I think of Jesus kind of dancing his way through the waves, just kind of enjoying the way the water is bouncing around. Do we regularly equate joy with Jesus? I think that times with Jesus can and should and actually do include moments full of laughter and fun, enjoyable moments. So the first thing that comes to mind when I read this reading about Jesus walking on the water is the Jedi or martial arts ninja turtle side of all this. So if I do all the right workouts and I follow Jesus all the right ways and follow Jesus hard enough and say the super spiritual prayers, is there a way that we can all learn to dance on the water and walk on the water with Jesus? What if I said, hey, come on with me. Today we're going to go try it. There was a little sentence in the middle of the commercial. I don't know if you saw it. It said, please don't try this at home. This is a professional dancer dancing on the water. You all would just say I'm crazy. And you'd probably get up and leave this sermon message right in your email where you found it if I said, come on. To be truthful, in the Lutheran tradition, we have this understanding of grace that is in the theology that we profess. Jesus has already done the work. So there's no different super spiritual Jedi mindset, simple status that you can work your way up to. You can't get super spiritual by trying harder with God. I do love to swim in the water. I think I'm going to keep doing that instead of trying to walk on the water. And I feel called here to serve at Nativity. And, you know, we can celebrate. We can celebrate just like we did yesterday at the ordination. I just feel so thankful and so blessed. And so many of you were involved in making that such a special day. And as far as learning to walk on the water, I do not think that we're being asked to get from this text that if we work super hard, we can walk on the water together. So Jesus has stayed behind on the beach. Jesus sent the disciples off in a boat while he dismissed the crowds and went and got alone with God to pray. In this narrative, in this story, Jesus puts the disciples into the boat, sends them off to travel into the wind across the sea overnight. And Jesus goes up the mountain to pray. I'm imagining Jesus climbing up the mountain and finding a spot with a great view over the boat so he could see the ragtag disciples from a distance. And I can see Jesus praying and asking God, what do you want me to do with these guys? And he prays for each of them by name, even Judas, the one who will betray him. Jesus knows the disciples. And as they drift away from the shore, Jesus also knows they're going through some rough waters and some unrest. So in the morning, Jesus starts walking out to them on the water. I think Jesus is excited to see his friends, just like the guy in the video. He wanted to dance across the water to get to where he was going, because he was excited about what's on the other side. I think Jesus wanted to dance across the water because he was excited to get to the boat with his friends. But it's been nighttime, and the wind and the chaos of the waves has unsettled the boat, and they are tired. And it is finally morning, and now they are in fear, because on top of Jesus leaving them all alone out on the water overnight, here comes a ghost. I imagine myself in that boat. Have you guys been in a boat in rough waters? It's not pleasant. You can't figure out how to keep your balance. Everything just rocks and sways, and none of it is with the waves. And if you need to do boating tasks, like casting in a fishing line, or adjusting sails, or revving the motor the right way, it's not very predictable. It's very difficult to figure out. In rough seas, everything's chaotic, and it seems like everything's out of control. Each time you take a step forward, you get knocked around. It's easy to fall down. Mostly you end up crawling around, trying to get anything done. I have a story from my life. In 2008, Amanda and I, my wife Amanda, we bought a house near the church where I was serving. When we bought the house, we bought it knowing that the house needed some work, but also that the house was listed much lower than the market prices were listing similar houses for in our neighborhood. About 6 months later, the housing market crashed and the bubble burst, and we found out what it was like to be underwater on a home. But for us, it was actually literally underwater. You see, the day we found our home was the day after a tropical storm had come through, and the backyard had some flooding. So we jokingly, when we moved in, named the backyard puddle Lake Lily, after our firstborn daughter named Lily. And the first month we were in the new house, I had a member of the church come in with his front loader from his farm, and together we dug a French drain, or I should say he operated the machine to dig the French drain, and the water was gone. Problem solved. Well, a summer or two after this housing bubble had burst, so our house was now worth less than what we paid for it, and the equity had all disappeared. A hurricane came through to our area. It actually hit right at the Chesapeake Bay. So it hit just barely north of our house. So that meant we got the absolute most that this storm had to offer, because we were on the side of the storm that was the strongest. So me, being the one who was expecting the weather to storm inside and comfortable and warm because I had taken care of the drainage, found out that this French drain I was so proud of only moved about a quarter of the water we needed to move out of the backyard. Needless to say, within an hour of this storm hitting, our basement was flooded, and we were in for a 2-day journey of putting out sandbags, mopping up water, and sometimes just giving up from exhaustion. You know, we thought we had everything covered. We had dug a drain, we had made the plans, and yet life happened. And we were caught in the middle of it, and we went for a ride. The next morning, the storm had passed, and we were able to dry out. We had saved most of what we valued. I would love to say that Jesus just miraculously came in and fixed it all, but it took several more ditches, several more storms, several sump pumps, and a lot of prayer time in the yard with shovels before we figured that problem out. I say prayer time with the shovels. I'm sure you know what kind of prayers I was saying as I was digging again and again and again. But Jesus was with us as we suffered through the storm and the wind and the waves. And Jesus calmed the wind after we were all back in the boat. If we're honest, life just comes at us sometimes. Everything seems to be lining up for a smooth, predictable rhythm, and life just seems to be going really good, and then life just happens. News comes about a layoff or a lost job. A cancer diagnosis or a health issue suddenly appears, and we don't know what to do. Something breaks in the house, and the money to fix it just wasn't in the budget. A family member, a loved one, a spouse, or a child has betrayed trust and let us down. For me, it was a long battle with a poorly designed property for rain and for drainage. The seas of life can be rough, unpredictable. Some of us are going through seasons like that right now. Some are just coming back from a stretch where life happened and it was hard. And as much as we desire for it to be regular and predictable, unpredictable life will happen to us again right around the corner. And in the midst of our rough seas, Jesus has been off praying with the Creator, watching over us, asking God what to do to better care for us. But it feels that God is far off. We don't see the results of those prayers right away. We just see the choppy seas of life all around us. One thing about Jesus, though, in the midst of the storm and the chaos, Jesus is to be found dancing on the waves, getting to know more about the forces at play, and inviting us to come out and up and on top of the chaos to learn and to grow in spite of the suffering. Jesus doesn't cause the suffering, but he chooses to remain there with us in the suffering, caring for us, loving, and lifting us through. I think the important part of the message we find here today is that Jesus is with us and lifting us through the rough seas. Jesus invites us out of the boat and into the stormy seas to walk and dance on the waves. And when it gets scary or uncertain, we are called to have the faith to reach out and grab Jesus' hand and to walk back to the boat on the waves. As the waves and the wind unsettle us, Jesus is there with us to then get us back into the boat and then to calm the seas. Whatever difficult thing is in our life right now, whatever difficult thing might be in my life, whatever difficult thing is in your life right now, we are called to step out of the boat and to grab Jesus' hand and to get involved in what Jesus is doing to help us grow, to become more brave in the middle of all the chaos of what seems to be the sinking life around us. Jesus is ready to pray for us, to encourage us, to come alongside us in the form of other believers here at the church and in the form of people who surround us in our daily lives. And when they got into the boat, the wind ceased. There is a journey Jesus calls us into in which the waves are choppy and we are sinking, but also in which our faith is bolstered, our courage is mustered. Life is unsettled when the wind is blowing and the waves are choppy, but Jesus is with us in the midst of the chaos. And while Jesus holds our hands and holds us up in the midst of the choppy water, Jesus also helps us get back to the boat and helps stop the wind when it is time to stop the wind. Jesus is here with us. We can reach out and we can be a part of what Jesus is doing. Amen.